Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. This is the show where between my guest interviews with subject matter experts and topic-specific deep dives, the aim is to arm you with actionable insights and information on how to prioritize your metabolic health and improve your overall health and well-being. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Animal-Based Dad podcast. I'm your host, Ricky Duplessis, and this is another of the Thursday deep dives. Now, for those who've been following the podcast, you'll be aware that I'm doing a bit of a mini-series with the fantastic Roderick. We've issued or published the first episode, which was all to do with inflammation, last week, Thursday, and I think it was quite fascinating. It certainly got some pretty good feedback so far. And on that topic, I just want to take a second to ask you, if you like the episode, if you have any comments, queries, specific questions that you would like addressed about the topic in discussion, please do drop those comments, drop your questions into the comments on the show, whether you're watching off of Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, or Substack. Please do get in contact or DM me directly. You'll be able to find me. Obviously, you're watching the episode, you'll be able to get my details from there. DM me directly, because what Roderick and I want to do is collate any of the questions that our viewers, that the audience have. And at the end of his 5-part mini-series, we're going to do a bit of a Q&A session where we try to address those queries and answer them as best we can. So if you've got queries and you'd like them answered, please do send them through. We will collate them and we will endeavor to answer them in the Q&A session at the end of his 5-part mini-series. That being said, and sort of back to the topic of discussion, we're taking a bit of a pause this week. So I won't be published, or I've obviously not published episode 2 in Roderick's mini-series. Episode 2 in his mini-series, which deals with circadian biology and circadian rhythms, will come out next week, Thursday, which is the 24th of April. And so for this episode, I'm doing a bit of a filler because Roderick has taken so much deserved time off over the Easter period, and we're letting him and his family enjoy their time together and not have to worry about preparing a podcast episode. So episode 1 came out last week, Thursday. Episode 2 of his mini-series, his 5-part mini-series, will be published next week, Thursday, 24th of April. And so for today, you are stuck with me. But I thought I'd take the opportunity to talk to you about something that I find quite fascinating, because I'm right in the midst of it at the moment, and that's the subject area involved in my second book, which I'm currently busy writing. And what I want to talk about is the overall understanding of metabolic health that I've come to acquire over the last 7 years. And one of the common pitfalls and trappings that people tend to fall into in siloed sort of single myopic thinking that people tend to adopt, myself included, because I fell into that trap and I had to find my way out of it. But yeah, just talk through the process. And then in the book, I'm going to introduce a concept that I'm quite excited about. And I think it'll be very, very helpful for a lot of people. And so, yeah, I'm pumped. I could talk about this for hours. I won't. Don't worry. This will be a relatively short episode. But I figured on the theme of deep dives, I'm going to deep dive how I came to the understanding of the 5 pillars of metabolic health. So the 5 pillars are, for those who haven't followed my content so far: nutrition, movement or exercise, sleep, light exposure, and grounding. 5 physiological inputs governed by lifestyle that literally tell your body what to do. And I unpack that very, very well in the book. This episode is brought to you thanks to my work as a Zinzino independent partner.
To find out more about Nzina's product offering within test-based personalized nutrition, or to find out about how to join as an independent partner yourself and build a revenue stream in helping others take the guesswork out of their personal health journeys, please stay tuned because I'll be sharing information later in this episode.
So effectively, my story, and I'll start at the beginning. I've always been an active guy. Sports and being physically active was just part and parcel of lifestyle growing up where I grew up in South Africa. You played sport at school, different sports through the different seasons. I surfed, grew up in a coastal town in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. So most of my peer group, we were at the beach on the weekends. We surfed. We were part of the lifesaving club. We were skateboarding. We were active. Being active was just part and parcel of the culture and the lifestyle. It was just ingrained in us. It wasn't something that we did specifically for the health benefits. We reaped the health benefits, make no doubt, but it wasn't something that we did, at least at my age where I was. We never went out after the health benefits. We were just having fun. So exercise or movement was taken care of by default. I've always understood that to be important because it's always been ingrained in part of my culture and part of my thinking and part of how I live. So I've always been an active sort of guy. I've had periods of my life where I was inactive or less active, and I've had periods where I got really fat and out of shape and stuff, usually following an operation. So I've had no ACL in my left knee since 2003 was the first rupture. I had it replaced. A few weeks later, ruptured it again almost a year to the day after that. So in 2004, ruptured it the second time. And then had that removed and have not had an ACL in the left knee since. So it's 2025. I've spent a larger proportion of my life without an ACL in my left knee than I had before that. So yeah, my knee has spent the majority of its existence without an ACL, which is a mad thing to think about, but it's the reality. After operations and stuff like that, then yeah, there were periods of inactivity and I gained weight because I ate like a horse. Used to eating really big meals, went to boarding school. So like, yeah, you ate a lot and you ate fast. It's just how it was. But as soon as I got active again, that sort of sorted itself out. And I was always in relatively decent shape. But then the thing that led me down this road into metabolic health was in my early 30s. So we're now rewinding to the period, I'd say, between 2015 and 2018. Sort of right after the birth of my daughter, where the lifestyle changed significantly. Suddenly it's my wife and I in the UK, no immediate family close by, no sort of grandparents to help out with the kid and do some babysitting and stuff like that. Like we literally were on our own, just the two of us, brand new baby, no manual to go with that. And we had to figure out how to do this thing called raising a child. And so lifestyle changed. And whilst I still tried to work out and sort of averaged 3, maybe 4 days a week in the gym, things just really started to fall apart for me. I gained a tremendous amount of weight. I got really unhealthy. My mental health suffered. And I walked through this whole process really well in an interview I did with Martin Gillespie for his podcast, the Metabolic Wellbeing Without the BS podcast. And I will include a link to that podcast in the notes of this one for those who are interested in watching. I walk through my backstory quite well in that. But suffice to say, I got to the point in my early 30s where the penny dropped that that movement alone, exercise alone, was no longer adequate. It wasn't doing the job on its own anymore, and I needed to fix other things. Now, in my absolute desperation to avoid calories in, calories out, and having to walk away from a meal feeling hungry, I jumped on Google and I started to search because I was desperate. There has to be a different way to go about this nutrition business that doesn't leave me feeling hungry and having to starve myself to lose weight. Lo and behold, I stumble across the world of low carb nutrition, and the rest is history. Right, so I get into ketogenic diet, I get into low carb animal based, I get into carnivore, like full blown carnivore, and yeah, my health changes dramatically. I lose a lot of weight. I pick up a lot of lean mass. I get into good shape. I get into great health. I feel fantastic. My mental clarity has never been better. For example, I have no issue doing a full day of work. I'm up early in the morning, working on my book before the kids get up. I do my work day. I do my workout over lunchtime. I get home, we have family time together. So the early evening, that's family time. Spend time with the wife and kids, dinner, bath time routine, bed routine with the kids. And then I come and sit down and I'm working again and I'm doing this. And if I wasn't recording an episode, I would be working my book. Mental clarity, not a problem. Mental fatigue, not a problem. Firing on all cylinders, feeling fantastic. And so getting my nutrition right made a profound difference in my life, a really significant difference in my life, so much so that I fell into one of the common traps that anyone going through that kind of profound health change seems to fall into. And then that trap is that I started to erroneously believe that my thing, the thing that had made that difference for me, was the thing, the be all and end all, the panacea, the fix all, the cure all. It's not. And it took me a little bit of a voyage of discovery to get to the point of understanding that. Because what I kept getting confronted by, and something I had to wrestle with repeatedly over a long period of time, was the evidence that other people were enjoying and experiencing the same sort of health benefits doing other things. For example, some people were getting exercise right, and seemingly that was doing the trick for them. Some people were fixing their sleep and seeing tremendous results as a result of fixing their sleep. Some people were getting outside and doing this weird thing called light diet, which at first I thought was weirdo, fairy nonsense. But thankfully, I was curious and inquisitive enough to look into it a little bit more and sort of figure out that actually, and we'll get into that, bear with me. And then last of all, people started doing this thing called grounding, which again, I remember the first time I came across this, it was, what's his bloody name? Zac Efron does some silly reality show with this dude, this vegan dude. Forget his name. Can't tell you his name. But I remember watching the episode and they'd flown somewhere and traveled somewhere. I think they went to Australia. I'm guessing at this point. I can't remember exactly, but they've just traveled somewhere and they've landed and they've driven a little bit or they're doing something. And this dude gets out, takes his shoes off and walks around on the grass and starts talking about grounding and being connected with the earth and Mother Nature. And my own bias gets into that a little bit because he goes a little bit too hippie about it, and I switch off. I'm like, I can't even take that seriously. Just turn it off, and I stopped watching. And so that was my introduction to grounding, and I thought it was very hoodoo nonsense. Like honestly, I thought it was crap. But then someone who I take quite seriously started talking about it, having had a similar experience, and he was inquisitive enough to want to go and debunk it. And he started looking at the science behind it and discovered that actually the science is pretty darn robust. And so I was like, oh shit, I got to take it seriously now. And so I started looking into it. And yeah, lo and behold, it's actually incredibly robust and compelling science to underpin the fact that grounding serves as a trigger and modulator of cellular level function in human beings. Lo and behold, so the science is there. So forget the hippie slant. There's solid, robust science to show the mechanisms of how grounding works to improve your metabolic health. And that was it for me. Like if the science is there and the science can demonstrate the mechanisms for me, fabulous. I will do it. And so confronted with this reality where nutrition was the thing for me, exercise was the thing for that person, light exposure was the thing for that person, sleep was the thing for that person, grounding was the thing for that person, saunas was the thing for that person, cold plunge was the thing for, and so on and so on. And you can see the picture that I'm building. I came to the understanding and the realization that, you know what, there's actually a lot of complex things at play here. There's a lot of nuance, and nutrition can't be the single only thing. And so I was forced to reconsider my paradigm, and that was a process for me. But I did, and I'm thankful that I did, because I started to step back and I started to see the bigger picture for what it is. And my initial conceptualization of this, and I've spoken about this before in some of the podcasts I've been on, I put together this conceptualization of human metabolic health being a complex jigsaw puzzle, which it is. Loads of different pieces of different shapes and sizes, and they all fit together to build this big, beautiful thing, which is a correctly functioning human body. Fantastic. Great conceptualization for that. It demonstrates that you kind of need all the pieces for the whole, but some pieces are bigger than others. And as you start to build the picture, you start to get a more and more complete picture. And that would explain why, for someone fixing this aspect, boom, they get a puzzle piece in, they get a more complete picture. They start to see the benefit. I get my nutrition right. Boom, there's a big puzzle piece. I see the benefit of that. And so you end up with this understanding that actually it's about taking one puzzle piece at a time, building that effectively into your lifestyle, and then getting the next puzzle piece and building that effectively into your lifestyle. And over time, and through well thought out and dedicated effort, piecing together a lifestyle that services your metabolic health, you start to get yourself into a position where you can achieve optimal. That's the goal, obviously, is to maximize your health span across the duration of your lifespan. In other words, you want to be as healthy as possible for as long as possible across your lifespan until the end where it falls off a cliff and you die. If you die of old age, that is. So yeah, that's the goal. You basically, and a great way to conceptualize health span is correct functioning. So when everything is functioning correctly, you feel great, you think great, you're capable and able to do everything that you need to do. That's what you want. You want to be sharp, functional, capable, able, and feeling great for as long as possible through your life. Okay. And so the initial conceptualization I had was this jigsaw puzzle, but then I started to pay attention because lifestyle keeps coming up. Lifestyle keeps coming up. And what I noticed was that for me, the biology matters. Like, as I alluded to in the grounding example, I'm not necessarily interested in the wishy-washy fairy nonsense. I want to know that there's robust science, and I want to know that the science ties into the biology of the human being, because that's what we are. We are a biological creature. We're a thing. We have biology. We have our physiology. And I want to know that the thing does something. So the input, lifestyle factor, the thing that we're doing, I want to understand the mechanism of what that's doing to my physiology, which then yields the health benefit outcome that I'm receiving from it. And if I have that, if science can demonstrate that for me, input, mechanism, benefit, happy days. I'm a happy bunny, and I will look at how I can incorporate that. Fantastic. And we have those for all of the little jigsaw puzzles or pieces, jigsaw pieces in the puzzle. But I started to notice that there was a divide. And for me, it becomes quite an important divide in terms of trying to help people structure what to do when. And that divide is something like this. There are things that have been with human beings since time immemorial. So since beginning of time, however you want to conceptualize that, whether you conceptualize that through a creationist lens, I'm a Christian, or you conceptualize it through a evolutionary lens. The bottom line is that these things have been with us since the very beginning, and therefore it's reasonable to argue that they have informed our biology and the way our biology functions, so much so that our biology, our physical being, actually expects their input, expects their stimulus for the signaling of correct function. Okay. Input, mechanism, benefit, right? These 5 things are nutrition, specifically species appropriate nutrition, because human beings are not the universal digesters that we like to imagine ourselves to be. And I do a really thorough job of unpacking this in my book, Conquering King's Stomach, which is linked in the show notes. So if you're curious to understand what the human being is supposed to eat according to our biology, which is to say, the function of our digestive system, our essential nutrient requirements, and the harmony of which food sources are most closely aligned to our digestive function. So what can we digest best? And are most nutrient dense and bioavailable in the essential nutrients that we need as human beings. I unpack all of that in Conquering King's Stomach. I underpin it all with the relevant science. I reference it all, and I lay it out in a way that I think puts the best argument forward. So if you want to wrestle with that, Conquering King's Stomach, it's not expensive. The ebook is, I think it's £4 or £5. Not much. Really good read. I've had some good feedback on that already. So species appropriate nutrition, movement, not just exercise. Exercise is part of movement, but movement is bigger than that. Movement, which means exercise, which means walking, which means daily tasks, getting up and down. The human animal, the human being, the creature that we are, was not made for sedentary life. And that's easily demonstrated, extremely easy to demonstrate. And as we tend to do, we can go to extreme examples because they tend to give the most drastic sort of show and tell. And so I'll do that. In latter life, so for someone over the age of 60, say, a fall is an extreme worry. Why? It's not necessarily because of the break. Yes, the break is a problem. So commonly elderly people who fall will break a hip or something like that, right? As they impact the ground. They'll break something, do themselves some damage. That's not the major health concern. You go speak to any doctor who is involved with the care of the elderly. The major concern with an elderly person falling, and the reason they try to encourage elderly people to avoid sarcopenia as heavily as they do, is the sedentary part that comes afterwards, the being laying up in bed, because the decline in their health as a result of being stuck in bed is astounding. They go from fully functional, capable people. They have a fall, they break something, and they're in bed for a number of weeks, trying to let that thing heal before they can get up and get mobile again. And you watch their health fall off a cliff. Human beings are not made to be sedentary. Being sedentary destroys our health. Easily demonstrated in any older, like old age home, care home type of environment. Again, that's an extreme example, but it demonstrates it quite vividly and quite eloquently, I think, because it should be a stark warning to anyone. But being sedentary, just being laying up in bed for ages, is terrible for your health. Bottom line. Okay, so movement is more than just exercise. It's moving, doing tasks. You're made to be active from waking up to going to sleep. You're supposed to be an active being. It's only really recently in the overall scheme of human history that we have become sedentary. Really, really recent, because before the Industrial Revolution, basically everything required physical work. It didn't matter what you did. Like, there weren't desk jobs. Desk jobs didn't exist. That's a post-industrial revolution thing, and that's a blip on the radar in terms of overall human time on this planet. And again, regardless of which lens you're using, whether through a creationist lens or an evolutionary lens, it's the last minute of the day. If all of human time were a 24-hour period on a clock, post-industrial revolution, where we've been able to be sedentary, is like the last minutes of the day, basically. It's a blip on the radar, and it's bad for us. So you are made to move. You need physical stimuli. You need to be lifting things, not necessarily training heavy. Training heavy is fantastic, and everyone should, and I would encourage everyone to lift heavy, because building muscle and having a solid muscle base is the number one defense against sarcopenia and the number one defense against falls and trips. And that's especially important as you get on towards later life. And the thing with muscle is, once you've got it, it's really relatively easy to maintain. But if you don't have it and you get past a certain point in life, it's incredibly difficult, nigh on impossible to put on. So the earlier you set that solid base and have a good muscular frame on you, and I'm not saying bodybuilder big, like, don't get me wrong, we don't have to go to extremes on that. I'm saying for your frame, for your height, you want to be physically capable. You want to be well built and capable. And you want to maintain that through your life, because that is going to be your best defense against falling and ending up sedentary against your will and having a health fall off a cliff. So movement is incredibly important.
Hey everyone, I hope that you are enjoying the discussion so far. I apologize for interrupting the episode, but I just want to take a moment to talk to you about the work that I do with Zinzino. Zinzino are a brilliant Scandinavian biotech and life sciences firm. Their concept of test-based personalized nutrition is absolutely revolutionary, and they are the pioneers of test-based personalized nutrition. I use their products and solutions myself and my family. In fact, we use multiple of their products. And Zinzino has been instrumental in helping me identify that I was omega-3 deficient, horrendously so, and to get my omega-3 deficiency resolved. You see, their at-home tests give you the data and insights needed to inform your dietary strategy to see whether you have any key essential nutrient deficiencies or imbalances that need addressing. And where you do, they have targeted supplementation stacks that are personalized to you according to your age, sex, and body weight, which means they are most effective to get you back to optimal. This isn't about just avoiding deficiency. This is about getting you back to optimal, and that's a complete and utter game changer. So if you would like to know more, I have linked a short survey in the episode description. Complete the survey. It asks you some simple questions about your health goals and desires. It takes less than a minute to complete, and what I'll give you off the back of that is a personalized product recommendation out of Zinzino's solution catalog, telling you which I think best suit your desires and needs and why. I'll then also personally reach out to you to see if there's any questions or queries that I can answer. Let me take the guesswork out of your health journey.
Sleep. Sleep is massive. I used to be an idiot, and I used to pride myself on this thing called being the sleepless elite. What a freaking dumbass I was. There's nothing elite about being sleepless. When you start to appreciate the importance of sleep and what it actually does, because it's not just shutdown, it's not just reset, it's not passive. Sleep is an incredibly metabolically active state to be in. It is the state of repair, and it is the state of rejuvenation. Now, it should be commonplace, and I don't think that we'd have many people that would be surprised by my statement of, when you sleep, for those of us who train, when you sleep is when the muscle repair happens, and that's where growth happens. So it's not while you're doing the exercise. While you're doing the exercise, you're breaking the muscle tissue down. That tells your body, crap, I need to be stronger, I need to get better, bigger, more functional here. And then while you sleep, that's where that process takes place. That's where your body repairs itself and builds itself back stronger, more capable, more functional in response to the stimulus that you put in. Your brain does the same. Did you know that you have a process called lymphatic drainage that happens in your brain, and it can only happen during non-REM deep sleep? So that's a specific phase within your sleep cycle where your lymphatic system, which is in your brain, clears out and cleans out all of the sort of metabolic byproducts. So a great way to think about it, I'll use a little analogy of being in the room here. So in the room here with me, there's me, and I'm talking to you, and I'm doing so via this laptop. Now, imagine the laptop as a process of us having this conversation has a byproduct, an output, a waste that is discharged from it. I would, in the room that I'm in, need a mechanism to clean that waste, to clear it out, to stop it from being a problem. And as long as that mechanism works, everything is fine. Clears out the waste, computer keeps functioning, are able to continue the conversation with you. Nothing's hampered, nothing's wrong, all good. However, if that clearing out mechanism were to stop or not function correctly anymore, then what we'd end up having is a situation where that waste would start to build up. And that buildup can become problematic. Same thing in your brain. If the lymphatic drainage mechanism isn't given the opportunity to work, in other words, if you're not getting adequate non-REM deep sleep, you're not enabling your lymphatic drainage system or your lymphatic system to drain and clear out the brain properly and remove those metabolic byproducts. And that can become a major problem to your cognitive function. So sleep is hugely important. It is not just passive, and it is not something to be trifled with. It is a vital component of your metabolic health and well-being, and you should be taking it seriously. Light exposure. This one I thought was really weird. A little bit hoodoo-like, a little bit voodoo-like. I wasn't too sure about it. But the more I look into it, the more convinced I am that the science is there. And again, input, mechanism, health benefit. Fantastic example of this that I recently learned about that I thought was absolutely fascinating was the sun gives off a full spectrum of natural light. It's not just UVA and UVB rays. There's near red, there's infrared, there's blue, there's green, and there's a whole spectrum of light. Now, near red and infrared we cannot see with our eyes. Same as ultraviolet, we don't see that, but we can't see infrared with our eyes. But we feel it. We can feel it on our skin. It's the warmth, it's the infrared, right? When you think about any infrared device that you have, and you get the little massage things. We've got one that's like, don't even know what you call it, this pillow type thing you put around your neck, and it's got a little massagey things that then get working on your neck and your back. And that has the little infrared button, and you turn it on, and the little infrared bulbs go on, and you feel the heat, and it soothes your muscles and so forth. So, point being, you can't see infrared, but you can feel it. What I recently learned is that where infrared is hitting your skin, it's not just warming your skin. That's what you feel. You feel the warmth. But what's actually happening is infrared will penetrate your skin. Infrared gets into you. And it gets right down into your cells, like gets into the cell. And it stimulates and signals the mitochondria within your cells to produce more melatonin. Now, melatonin, most people are familiar with melatonin because the pineal gland will excrete melatonin while you sleep, and it has a function during your sleep period. This infrared-derived melatonin within the cell itself, so localized to the cell itself, has a completely different function, right? That melatonin acts as an antioxidant. It neutralizes free radicals and it neutralizes reactive oxygen species within the cell itself, thereby improving cell efficiency. I thought that was fantastic. What fascinating. Where did you learn that infrared is that important? I mean, if anything, and I have this with my daughter coming back from school, like the curriculum these days, like everyone's taught to bloody avoid the sun at all costs, slap on your factor 50 and wear your hat and protect yourself and don't be exposed to the sun. It's going to cause you skin cancer. It's going to do you damage, blah, 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 which, yeah, absolutely, it can do you damage when exposure is chronic and inappropriate. But for goodness sake, you are supposed to get direct contact, unfiltered, unmitigated, unscreened, direct contact with the sun daily. There's a whole bunch of hormonal and chemical cascades that sunlight and the different spectrums within natural sunlight trigger within your cells that are part and parcel of your correct metabolic function, which is another fancy way of saying your cellular health and function. And a very simple way to picture this is if you are looking after your health at the level of the individual cell, then every tissue that cell is making up, every organ that tissue is making up, and every system of the body that organ is involved in thrives. And that is why metabolic health is so important. That is why metabolic health, in my opinion, underpins everything, physical and mental health.
Given you've made it this far into the episode, I can only assume that human metabolic health is a subject you find fascinating and engaging, and it resonates with you, and that's absolutely awesome because we're very much alike in that regard. And because of that, I want to take a moment to talk to you about potentially becoming a Zinzino independent partner in the same way that I have. You see, Zinzino have tremendous opportunities available for independent partners, meaning people who decide that they don't just want to be a customer, but instead want to use the concept of test-based personalized nutrition to benefit their own health, to take the guesswork out of their own health journeys in the same way that I have, but then to build that user story, to build that testimony of the difference that that's made in our health journeys, and use that to market Zinzino's product, to market the concept of test-based personalized nutrition in the exact way that I'm busy doing right now, and bring on board other customers and other partners to grow the distribution network. And in doing so, you get handsomely rewarded through their compensation scheme, which is one of the best that I've seen in the industry. So if you'd like to explore setting up a side revenue, whether it be something that you only do a couple hours a week or something that you put a little bit more effort into and build into a full-fledged career, or anything in between, get in touch and let's have a talk about the opportunity and how this might be the right fit for you, not only to take the guesswork out of your personal health journey, but to also build you additional income streams that help to improve your financial situation and the possibilities for you and your family.
So light exposure, big one. Had no clue about it. Grounding was the next one. Grounding, I thought that grounding was hoodoo voodoo nonsense. Like really, I did. I thought it was absolute crap. And then Professor Bart K started talking about grounding. And Professor K he's a person who, whilst being eccentric to a degree, whilst putting on a good act to sort of game the YouTube algorithm, his approach to science is extremely thorough, extremely robust, and it's worth taking him seriously. I take him seriously. And him talking about grounding, I was like, oh, I've got to take this seriously now. So I started looking into it. And yeah, there is some pretty robust scientific evidence to show input, mechanism, health benefit for grounding, right? So at a very layman's level, where you are grounded, electrically connected to the earth, you are able to take up free electrons that come up out of the earth and act as antioxidants within you and help to neutralize free radicals and reactive oxygen species, which are those metabolic byproducts that we were talking about, and therefore improve cell efficiency and help to reduce and mitigate inflammation. But didn't teach me that at school. You don't really hear people talking about that much, but yeah, grounding is a fantastic way to manage inflammation levels and to ensure that your cell efficiency is getting looked after. Fantastic stuff. These 5 things have been part and parcel of what have informed human biology because we've had them for so long. And just think pre-industrial revolution, please. For a moment, just cast your mind back and think what life would have looked like. Think back to biblical times even, so 2,000 years back. Think even before that, right? You would have eaten what was available. You would have eaten predominantly meat, and you would have substituted or supplemented that meal with seasonal fruit and vegetables, depending on what was available in your area at that time, because there were no supermarkets, there were no big industrial farms. You ate seasonally what was available. Right, meat is available all year. You just got to go hunt and catch it. Fruits and vegetables grow in their season. We did not have the technology back then to force them to grow out of their season. So meat all year round, fruits and vegetables, each in its relative season. Your very existence, everything you needed to do was physical, right? From getting food to getting water, everything had physical components. You were physically active from sunrise to sunset, not necessarily working out and lifting heavy and getting sweaty and stuff like that. Sure, that would have been part and parcel of it, but you would not have been sedentary. The people who were sedentary were the people who were sick. And sedentary people get sicker and sicker and sicker and die, right? So physical activity was part of the struggle to survive. And that's perhaps an unfair way of framing it, struggle to survive, because it gives the impression that the physical activity is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all when you understand what it does for us beyond energy balance, which I unpack in the book. Again, my simple take on all of this, my simple requirement: input, mechanism, health benefit. If you can demonstrate that for me, happy days. Physical movement does things for us beyond just balancing energy. It signals muscles to grow, it signals tissues to strengthen, it signals joints to function. It does so much more than just energy balance. So movement is important. Sleep, spoken about the lymphatic drainage. Sleep was an important thing too, but you would have slept naturally because the sun's gone down and there was no TV and there was no Netflix and there weren't really books to read and you weren't able to distract yourself much. So it got dark, you went to bed and you slept and you'd wake up when it was light again. Sleep was important. Sleep is still important. Sleep has been with us forever. And it's one of the most important things that you require for your health, mental and physical. Light exposure. We had fire, right? We had fire, and we'll get into the episode, the deep dive episode that Roderick and I are going to do on the light diet. We'll get into this a lot more, but the things that light do for us, like fire, wasn't sufficient to really interfere with our circadian rhythm. Unnatural blue light, LED blue light specifically, interferes with your circadian rhythm from the perspective of if you're sat in an office all day under blue rich LED lights, if you're sat at home under blue rich LED lights, you are interfering with your body recognizing that the sun is now going down or gone down, and setting in place that cascade of hormonal responses, which are meant to get you ready for the process of sleep. Because remember, sleep is a metabolic process. It's not, you haven't shut your system down. Your system isn't at rest. Your system is working, and it's working hard for all the things that restore you and rejuvenate you. It is an active process, albeit you're not conscious of it. And it needs that preparation. So when we're interfering through the light, when we're interfering with the signaling that's meant to be telling our bodies, right, the sun's busy going down. Okay, now the sun has gone down. Time to get ready for bed. Let's start the different hormonal cascades that sort of up sleep or like uptick your sleepiness and sort of lower your wakefulness and then get you ready to sort of settle down and go to sleep, right? Interfere with all of that and it doesn't happen. Pre-industrial revolution, even pre-1990, well, not 1990, where did LEDs come out? It was around about the 90s, early 2000s maybe, that LEDs really started to become popular. Now, interestingly, incandescent bulbs, which are becoming increasingly hard to find because they're very energy inefficient, so they're not environmentally friendly. The light that they emit does not, it's not blue-rich light, and so it doesn't interfere with the circadian rhythm, at least not anywhere near to the degree that the blue-rich LEDs do. And so it's only really, really recently that we've had this problem. But beyond that, we also now have desk jobs. For example, in the winter here in the UK, it is very easy for you to wake up in the dark, travel to work in the dark, sit in the office under blue-rich LED lighting, leave work in the dark, get home in the dark, and never see the natural sun. And that fundamentally screws with your circadian biology. It's not a good thing. Our forebears, our forefathers, our pre-industrial revolution forefathers didn't have that problem. Right? Night came, they went to sleep. Like not immediately, they still would have had dinner, socialized around a fire, whatever the case may be. But the point was, or rather the point is, they're not sat there watching TV. They're not sat there reading or playing games on a tablet, watching kitten videos on YouTube, or whatever the case may be, scrolling social media. They're not doing that late into the night. Those things demonstrably and negatively impact your circadian rhythm. And in so doing, demonstrably negatively impact your metabolic health. So light is important. And the correct light diet, that circadian rising and setting of the sun, light dark 24-hour period that we go through, our biology is informed by that, literally informed by that. Your master clock, I'm going to call it, I forget the name now. Roderick covered it really well in the episode that will be published next week, Thursday. It's going to bother me. It's going to bother me. Let me look it up quickly. Supercharismatic nucleus, your SCN, supercharismatic nucleus. There we go. That's it. That's what it is. That sits in your brain, and that actually dictates your circadian rhythm based on the light input. Right, so where you're not getting the correct light at the correct times of day, you interfere with that. You interfere with the very master clock of your body, and you throw this entire cascade of things off. Right, so light diet is fundamentally at the core of what we are as a physical being. Then we get grounding. It is only very recently in human history that being electrically insulated from the earth 24/7 is a thing. Before that, people were touching the ground. They weren't insulated from the ground through layers of concrete, through synthetic shoes and clothing. People slept on the floor. People walked around barefoot. Like, being electrically earthed is demonstrably beneficial to human health. And the fact that you can uptake free electrons from the ground and have them act as fairly potent antioxidants and lower inflammation, as well as other things also, which we'll get into in the book. We've had that forever. That was part and parcel of what informed us. And it's only really recently that we've stopped having that. And so those 5 things, for me, are what I would call ancestrally appropriate. And that's why I settled on the 5 pillars of metabolic health, because from a biological perspective, these are the things that we've had since time immemorial that have been with us to the point that they've actually informed how our biology functions. And your body literally has receptors to receive signals from these inputs that will trigger cascades of chemical, hormonal responses that will tell your cells to do things required for optimal health. Input, mechanism, benefit. We can demonstrate all of that, and I unpack that in good detail in the book. And I'm enjoying that process. I'm enjoying writing about it. And so what I've started to do is, instead of this jigsaw puzzle conceptualization, I've actually started to picture and put together a bit of a hierarchy, which I'm quite excited to make public once it's ready. It's based on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for those who are familiar with it, which is a pyramid shape that has different levels of requirements that a human being would have, motivators, if you like, that start with the most fundamental at the bottom: food, shelter, water, warmth, and then start to move up: community, family, so on and so on, and then move up another tier. In fact, I've got a copy of it. Give me a second. I will pull it up and I will share it quickly, because why not? Who doesn't like a good infographic? Come on. Right. Let me see if I can share that. Share. There we go. There you have it. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So, physiological inputs, safety inputs, social inputs, self-esteem inputs, self-actualization. Right? So these are motivation steps, if you will, starting with the very fundamentals at the bottom and then building up. And what Abraham Maslow sort of cottoned onto and what he articulated with the creation of this triangle is that the person is utterly incapable of sorting out self-actualization if they haven't first got all the lower parts of the pyramid sorted and in place. Your self-esteem, you're going to have a hell of a hard time sorting your self-esteem out properly if you're lacking social sort of inputs, if you're lacking the safety input. So if you don't feel safe and you're worried because you can't keep the heating on at home, and you've got to choose between heating and food, and socially you're a bit awkward and you don't have a close group of friends, there aren't people who you can reach out to and sort of lean on in hard times, your self-esteem is going to be shot, right? Does that make sense? You have to take care of the base level before you can move on to the next level, and so on and so forth, all the way up to the point of achieving self-actualization. That's Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I have recognized the utility of that. And I've looked at human metabolic health. And instead of a jigsaw puzzle with loads of different pieces that all interconnect and fit together, which I think is still an appropriate conceptualization of metabolic health, but I don't think that it's the most practical, because it doesn't provide much in the way of direction, in terms of you can't do everything all at once. So if you were to pick a starting point, how would you pick that starting point? And based on what would you then choose to do next? And so on and so forth until you build that entire puzzle. The jigsaw puzzle tends to be a bit haphazard. Yeah, you could start with a corner piece because that's what gives you the outer frame, but then it's really haphazard. Get a piece, put it in, and you work your way through. I think there's a more eloquent way of sorting out human metabolic health. And so I've put together the hierarchy of metabolic health. And I'm excited to release that as part of the book. I've got an illustration being worked on to sort of put it together. And then I detail out the logic, the rationale for why I've placed things at different points within the hierarchy, and why I think things are more fundamental and why things are more nice to haves. And of course, in similar fashion to Maslow's hierarchy, with mine, you start at the bottom, you start at the fundamentals, because obviously they're the fundamentals, clues in the name. And then if you've got those right, you can move on to the next level. Once you've got those in place, you can move on to the next level and to the next level. And the way that I've put this together, the logic that makes the most sense to me, is to come at this through a biological lens and look at it from the perspective of accounting for our very biology and the way it works. Like, what is it expecting from our environment and lifestyle? That has to be the base. And for me, that's the 5 pillars. That's nutrition, species appropriate; movement, adequate; sleep, adequate; light exposure, correct timing of and adequate type; and then grounding as often as possible. That is the base of my hierarchy, and that is the starting point for anyone. And then obviously within that, we detail out, start with nutrition, because everybody eats, and nutrition just seems to make the most sense as an inward. Get your nutrition on point, start to get nutrition sorted. Introduce exercise if you haven't already. So again, if your nutrition is on point and you're introducing exercise, then your body will recover more appropriately, more adequately, as a result of having your nutrition on point. So again, a great reason to have nutrition first. If your nutrition is on point, exercising appropriately, you will sleep better. Provided you're getting out of your own way, you will sleep better, because you'll tuck yourself out. You'll give your body all the right sustenance it needs to do the restorative and rejuvenating processes that it needs to do while you're sleeping, and off you go. Light exposure is as simple as get out into the daylight. That sounds simple. I know it's not necessarily simple. I know that modern lifestyle is an obstacle to this and makes it difficult, but you need to make effort to get out into unfiltered, natural sunlight. I say unfiltered because even window panes, even clear window panes, are enough to filter out some of that whole natural light spectrum. For example, you use the near reds and infrareds. and that becomes a problem. And then lastly, grounding. You need to get electrically earthed as often as possible as you can during the day. Now, we're about to go into summer here in the UK, so that's barefoot outside, easy peasy. If you can get to an open space, fantastic. If you can't, there's other clever technological advancements that you can make use of, and I detail them out in the book a bit better. But yeah, so I'm gonna wrap it up there, because I could talk on this for hours and hours and hours. But again, this isn't the Joe Rogan podcast. These aren't 3-hour long conversations, so we'll keep it at that. I hope that you found that interesting. I hope that you found that a little bit informative. I am looking forward to getting the second book completed and published. I think it's going to be tremendously helpful to a lot of people in providing a basic framework for what is the foundation of what you should work on. If you were to start trying to sort your health out, where do you start? What do you do, and how do you do it? And it provides a really good framework for all of that across 5 foundational pillars, because as I said earlier in the message, I have come to appreciate that human health is a little bit more complicated, a little bit more complex than just getting your nutrition right, just getting your exercise right. You can't treat it in silos. It's not in silos. These are all interdependent, interconnected, and interworking, part and parcel of what informs our physiology and how it works. Thank you for your time, everyone. Looking forward to getting Roderick's second episode in his miniseries published next Thursday. If you've enjoyed this conversation, if you have any questions about it, please drop me some comments. If you like these kind of discussions, if you find them interesting and informative, please like the episode, follow and subscribe to the channel. Your support would be tremendously appreciated. Thanks all.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching the episode. I hope that you found the conversation meaningful and informative, and I hope that it has empowered you with some tools and insights that you can take to tweak and improve your own lifestyle approach in pursuit of optimal metabolic health outcomes. If you've enjoyed the episode, and if you're enjoying the podcast, I'd like you to do me the kindness of please subscribing to the channel, giving it a like, maybe even giving it a share. Help to raise awareness and get the podcast in front of as many viewers as possible, because it is my passion to try and help as many people as possible to understand more of the nuance around metabolic health and how to tweak their lifestyle in pursuit of optimal outcomes. Also, if you have any constructive feedback, things that you think I could improve on, any critiques, any criticisms, please do feed them back. I give you my solemn word that I will take them seriously, and I will, to the best of my ability, work to improve and to give you a more refined and more targeted product as a result of your feedback. So I will take it seriously, and I'll do what I can to improve the show. But again, thank you very much for watching. Keep thriving.